What's going on, guys? Ron Parita here from TechnoBuffalo, and today I have a review for you guys of the Huawei Mate 9. This is the bigger, badder, slicker brother of the Huawei P9, which I reviewed a while back. This phone was created in conjunction with Leica and has some really interesting features with the camera, the size of the battery, the skin in terms of the UI, and a couple other things that I really want to touch on. Let's go ahead and get started. So first off, let's get the standard stuff out of the way. In terms of design, I think this phone looks really good. It's a standard, well-designed phone that we can expect from many manufacturers today. Build quality is fantastic, feels really good in the hand, and that's kind of all there is to that. On the back, we have a 20 megapixel dual camera, which I will jump into in a second, under which we have a fingerprint reader. The fingerprint reader is very, very fast, one of the fastest I have ever used, and very well integrated. I just didn't spend any time thinking about it, which is credit to Huawei. The screen, which is the main thing you're going to be looking at, is a 5.9-inch 1920 by 1080 display. Some of you may want a 2K display instead. For me, 1080p is more than good enough, and this screen looks stunning. It is so sharp. Colors are super vibrant. Everything looked awesome. It made for a really good viewing experience. No complaints here. There's also slight curves at the edges, nothing noticeable, just very subtle, which makes swiping left and right very pleasurable and easy for your finger. Other features to touch on real quick are Android 7.0 is here. You will find it with all your favorite features. However, it will be veiled under a skin. It's a Motion UI, which is Huawei's skin, and here it's in its 5.0 iteration, which is a little bit lighter than previous versions, but it's still one of the heaviest skins on the market. For me, I feel very neutral about it. It has some cool features, but honestly, I'm not a huge fan of the aesthetic. It makes icons big and bubbly, and I just like Android pure and unadulterated. That being said, one of the cool features is app twinning, which allows you to duplicate some apps like Facebook and have two literal versions of it, meaning you can sign into two separate accounts for Facebook and have two separate icons on your home screen, which is pretty cool if you are living a double life. With the Mate 9, we have the Kirin 960 processor. It's an octa-core 4 2.4 GHz Cortex A73s and 4 1.8 GHz Cortex A53s. Long story short, it's a very fast phone. Pairing that with 4 gigs of RAM, it can handle pretty much anything you throw at it. In my usage, I did not run into any issues. Huawei is bragging about their skin doing some optimization and making the phone faster over a longer period of time. For that, we'll have to do a long run review, so let us know in the comments down below if you want us to revisit this phone in a month or two after using it. Now let's move on to the two most interesting features about this phone, in my opinion: the cameras and the battery. The two cameras on the back are one 20 megapixel monochrome camera and a 12 megapixel RGB camera. This is where you're going to be getting your color rendition from. Both cameras are f2.2 and do a pretty good job. But the feature that really interested me was the shallow depth of field effect. We've seen this feature employed in several cameras now at this point on several high-end phones, and the effect is pretty interesting. It works really well like on most other phones when you give it time, when you really set up a shot properly, focus on the right spot. When you take the photo very quickly and keep it moving, it tends to mess up more often than not. And by mess up, I don't mean that the photo looks unusable. To the average eye, most people will be like, oh, that's a very nice looking photo with some nice blurry background and a nice sharp image in the front. But upon closer inspection, you'll notice that some of the blur isn't appropriate. Some of the stuff that is closer to camera might be completely sharp, and also part of it at the same distance might be out of focus. It's important to remember that blurriness and bokeh comes from the effect of something being closer or farther away from the camera, and the Mate 9 doesn't always do a perfect job of figuring out how much or how little to blur certain things in photos when you're moving fast. A small tendency I also found is when you're going to be in this mode, which is called wide aperture mode, the photos tend to overexpose a little bit. Your whites sort of clip into highlights. It works out okay because 9 times out of 10 those whites are going to be blurry and out of focus for you, so it looks kind of nice, but I wish it could retain that detail that it does in its standard camera mode. In my usage of this phone, more often than not, I ended up resorting to the standard camera mode and getting beautiful 20 megapixel stills. And I gotta say, the standard camera mode is fantastic. The photos are super sharp. It doesn't look artificially sharp, so you see that 20 megapixels coming through. Color rendition is really good, and it does a fantastic job of exposing photos, pulling a lot of detail from the highlights, mid-range, and shadows. In terms of low light and nighttime photos, this camera is a mixed bag. On one hand, you have really good low light for noise. It does a great job of reducing noise. You get very little grain, but on the other hand, the trade-off for that is you lose a lot of detail. So photos are nowhere near as sharp as I would like, and nowhere near as sharp as what you get with standard daylight well-lit photos from the same exact camera. Of course, this is to be expected, but the extent to which it's happening here with the Huawei Mate 9 is a little more on the extreme side. And while shooting in my day-to-day regular usage, it seemed as though I was getting a lot of camera shake, like the OIS wasn't doing that good of a job of keeping the lens steady. I would do my best to hold the camera as still as possible, and I would still get incredibly shaky images. I would say the OIS for photos is a little subpar compared to some other flagship phones out there. And last but definitely not least, the battery. This is something Huawei is very proud of, and they've managed to stuff 4,000 milliamp hours worth of batteries in here. And it lasts a very long time. Huawei's bragging saying it'll last you 2 days. It didn't last me 2 days, it lasted me about a day and a half, a day and a quarter. That being said, for me, a phone that'll last a full day is pretty impressive considering how heavily I use my phone. I watch a lot of videos, go on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all your standard stuff, but I have my phone on pretty much all day. I'm texting around the clock, and I use the phone at 75 to 80% screen brightness as well. With fast charging, a power saving mode, and an absolutely insane ultra power saving mode, the Huawei Mate 9 is going to be your best friend if you have issues with your current phone battery life. And so those are really my thoughts and feelings on the Huawei Mate 9. I think it is a great phone. Compared to the P9, I think it's taken everything to the next level in the best way possible, so props to Huawei for that. My big issue is the skin. I'm still not a huge fan of Emotion UI, even though it is better than previous versions. That being said, the hardware on this phone is so spectacular, and I'm such a big fan of it that I think I can honestly put up with Emotion UI, and I think I will. I'm going to be trying to use this phone as my daily driver over the next couple of weeks, so let me know what other coverage you want to see from us, and I'd be more than happy to create it. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.